Indigenous Approaches to Helping and Healing. 5 Elements of Indigenous Perspectives on Helping and Healing by Sabina Markham. Five elements of healing and wellness that I believe are true consist of traditional knowledge, Indigenous spirituality, the land and its connection to Indigenous people, identity, culture, and healing, and how we are all connected. And by that I mean the earth, people, everything around us. Traditional knowledge. Traditional knowledge, according to Robinson Dewar, is a difficult concept to explain. They note that many Indigenous people come from an oral community. They note the diversity amongst Indigenous people and the communities. And they note that all Indigenous people are okay with the colonial word tradition, or traditional. For this next section, I chose the canoe journey as something to talk about specifically because for me, it's a way that some traditional knowledge has been able to be passed down to the younger generations and how they've been able to learn about their Indigenous history, regardless of where they are from. Another part of the canoe journey that I wanted to highlight is that it's also an opportunity for Indigenous people to understand how other First Nations people or Indigenous people are working together. Both ladies in that picture are from Indigenous communities and they work for the RCMP. Now, the gentleman on the left is from the Shuswap Nation, or Shuswamic Nation. And the paddlers on the right is actually, it's a combination of volunteers from various police agencies, and kids, a lot of kids that were in care. The next pictures is just really highlighting how the people on the canoe journey had the opportunity to share the cultural teachings with the younger generations and those who didn't know. And how to approach a landing when coming in on the canoe and what was the proper protocol. These are things that you don't learn when you're not raised in culture, or even if you are, if there are no teachers there to show you. And for me, I personally believe this is part of the healing that our people need. And here's another picture of, a group of canoes that came, and, one of the chiefs who was in the canoe from the Shuswamic Nation, he showed everyone around him what was the protocol about asking for permission to land on someone else's territory. Indigenous spirituality. Indigenous people for centuries have been using ceremonies and Mother Earth and the Creator to engage in spiritual practices. This photograph was taken at BC Women's and Children's, where Cheryl Woolward was given the opportunity. She was honored at the opening ceremony as an Indigenous safe space was created for Indigenous people. Now, part of Indigenous spirituality is having the opportunity or the safe spaces created so people can practice their healing practices and not, be succumbed to only using Western knowledge. I do believe there is a combination, but if we don't have safe spaces for Indigenous people to practice spirituality, how are they going to get the opportunity to heal? And again, this ties into, if you work in the downtown east side compared to, working up in Prince George, it's quite the different experience of, who are the healers, who are the elders. Even in the Gitsan community, I learned that, it was different. You would have younger people who would be elders. Or even down here with some of the in the Klutman communities, they were reaching out to their brothers and sisters in the interior so they could have the teachings because they just don't have them. This is another picture from Children's, and it's just really meant to highlight, how we share a common theme of engaging in spirituality and ceremony. And I have heard from community members time and time again, this, in this example, she applied for a grant from INGH, and she was just so grateful that I was able to help her, and I was able to encourage her, because for her, the cultural activities that they were able to do as a community because of the grant was just incredible. Now, land and its connection to Indigenous people. So being connected to the land for Indigenous people ties into the holistic nature and healing. The example here was that I was able to learn about a cultural healing practice from a Stolo elder. Mrs. Ward being able to be honored at Children of BC Women's and Children, really highlighting how we're trying to incorporate Indigenous safe spaces and people understanding the importance of land to Indigenous people. Another thing about Indigenous people land is being respectful. I hang out a lot outside. It's about being respectful of Mother Earth and all living things, and it's a strength in Indigenous communities, and I think it's not actually often noticed in many Western communities. So this next section, I was looking at identity, culture, and healing. Now, not being raised in culture, I've definitely found it a difficult journey to, understand the full complexity of what it is to be Indigenous. And what I've noticed is that having an identity rooted in who you are seems to have a significant impact on the ability to engage in cultural activities. However, I've also noticed from quite a few research projects that I had the opportunity to partake in, even region by region, for example, in the Fraser Salish region, it was quite interesting, to be honest, to note how different demographic areas, there were some things for the youth, there were some things for those residential school survivors, and everyone was different. This next slide is really meant to highlight, today's Indigenous people, we are also not traditional, but we still need to remain connected to the land. This next picture was a Indigenous youth wellness event that was aimed at addressing suicide. Now, all 32 communities in the Fraser Salish region were invited to this event. This was community led. This was to address the colonialism inside that a lot of the youth were dealing with. And 27 communities actually showed up, and it was really, really impressive. We talk about being holistic in nature as Indigenous people, and it's everything. We say culture is healing. We have those who are spirit walkers, those who can talk to spirits, and they're a special gift. And every community has their own take on this. And this picture is from one of the INGH communities. You know, and it's talking about how healing it can be to be connected to our culture and who we are. I just briefly talked about the Indigenous wellness FNHA book. This is just a brief version or song of, you know, one of the events, you know, where the youth were using healing as, you know, music as a way for healing and to bring people together. Yeah, you know, I truly believe that healing and the elements of healing within Indigenous communities and cultures, it revolves around everything. The plants, the community members, the individuals, chief and council, you know, the health and wellness services that come in and out, the regional health authorities, you know, FNHA, you know, the in community health centers, if there is one, even, you know, right now the way FNHA is divided up with the regional envelope, everything is impacted. You know, FNHA has definitely been groundbreaking work and providing the framework so Indigenous traditional healers can do the work they were meant to do, and they're valued the same as in the Western system. I don't think you can separate any of these concepts. I think they're always going to be interconnected, and, you know, I truly believe that healing or being a healer or, you know, working with community members, you have to, you know, you need to have the teachings if you're someone who's been given teachings for that specific community, and you continue to pass them down. And, you know, if you haven't, then you find that person and you help the communities connect to what they need for healing. Now, I'm a firm believer that, you know, after working with quite a few Indigenous healers, that everybody comes with their own knowledge and their own experience. And, you know, while this presentation may be short and does not really quite do justice to Indigenous healing, I think that it's all interconnected. And, you know, yeah, so thanks for listening, and my apologies on not being late.